Ancient India, Chapter 4, Lesson 1, the Indus and Ganges River Valleys. First up, the creation of the Himalaya and Hindu Kush mountains. Millions of years ago, all of today's continents were part of a single continent called Pangaea. Then Pangaea slowly broke apart. Eventually, India broke loose from Africa and began moving northeast. About 55 million years ago, India began crashing into Asia. The force of the collision pushed up the earth to form the highest mountain ranges in the world, the Himalaya Mountains and the Hindu Kush Mountains. For thousands of years, India was cut off from the rest of the ancient world by a great wall. Rising along India's border, the wall was more than 1,500 miles long and nearly 5 miles high. The wall wasn't made of stone or brick. It was a wall of snow-capped peaks and icy glaciers. This great barrier is the Himalaya Mountains, the highest mountain range in the world. India's geographic setting. Stretching south from the Himalaya Mountains, the kite-shaped land of India bulges out from Asia into the Indian Ocean. Geographers refer to India as a subcontinent, a large landmass that juts out from a continent. For centuries, geography limited contact between the Indian subcontinent and the rest of the world. The Himalaya Mountains and the Hindu Kush separate India from Asia. Find them on the map. The Bay of Bengal, the Indian Ocean, and the Arabian Sea limit contact with lands to the east and west. These mountains and waters have been a major influence on the history and culture of the land. India's climate is dominated by monsoons, strong winds that blow across the region at certain times of the year. Look at the map. From October to May, the winter monsoons blow from northeast, spreading dry air across the country. Then in the middle of June, the winds blow in from the Indian Ocean. The summer monsoon picks up moisture from the ocean. It carries rains that drench the plains and river valleys daily. The people depend on summer monsoons to provide life-giving rain. If the monsoon is late or weak, crops could die, causing famine. If it brings too much rain, overflowing rivers can cause deadly floods. Barriers and pathways. Although the mountains isolated India from other lands, they do have openings. Find the Khyber Pass on the map. For thousands of years, passes through the Hindu Kush mountain range have served as highways for invading people. The earliest people of northern India probably entered the valley of the Indus River through these pathways. Great rivers rise in the mountains, fed by melting snows and rain. The Indus and Ganges rivers cut through the mountains. They flow across the plains of northern India and make farming possible in the river valleys. Life in the Indus River Valley. The Indus River Valley was fertile land that had rich soil where early farmers harvested a surplus of wheat and other grains. With a surplus of food, the population grew. Some villages became cities. From around 2500 BCE to 1500 BCE, well-planned cities flourished in the valley. One of these, Mohanjo Daro, lay along the banks of the Indus River. The world's earliest city planners. Mohanjo Daro was a large city that needed careful planning. Because the Indus River often flooded, the city's rulers had Mohanjo Daro city built on a high mound of earth. To make travel easier in the city, streets were laid out in square grids. People built their homes and shops along these squares. At the center of the city was the citadel, or the fortress. It was a group of public buildings enclosed by a high brick wall. One building held a huge bath, the Great Bath, with dressing rooms for bathers. Nearby stood a storehouse for the city's grain supply to house the surplus. Mohanjo Daro must have been cleaner than most other cities of its time. Clay pipes ran under the brick streets. It carried waste away from homes and public buildings away from the city. Outside the city, canals ran along the Indus River, which often flooded. But the canals controlled the flooding and redirected the water where it was most needed. Living in Mohanjo Daro, the city buzzed with activity. Merchants and artisans sold their wares from shops that lined the streets. Wagons loaded with grain rolled through the city. Traders came from as far away as Mesopotamia to buy and sell precious goods. The citizens of Mohanjo Daro lived in homes that opened into courtyards. Children played with toys and pets. Adults enjoyed games and music. Artisans fashioned jewelry and bright cotton clothing for people to wear. The language of the people is still a mystery. Their writings appear on square seals, but experts haven't been able to figure out what they mean. The form of government and the religion of Mohanjo Daro are also unknown. There are no royal tombs or great temples that we've found yet, but we do know they had a number of gods and were therefore polytheists. A mysterious decline. About 2000 BCE, Indus Valley farmers began to abandon their land. The climate may have changed, turning the fertile soil into desert, or great earthquakes may have caused floods that destroyed the canals. Without enough food, people began to leave the cities of the Indus River Valley. Between 2000 BCE and 1500 BCE, invaders from the north entered the valley. The people who remained at Mohanjo Daro in the end were too weak to resist them. Conquest by Aryans. The invaders called themselves Aryans, which in their language meant noble or high-born. They migrated or moved from their homelands in Central Asia to the Indus River Valley. For several centuries, waves of these nomadic herders swept into India. As the Aryans crossed the plains of northern India, the people of the Indus River Valley huddled behind their crumbling walls. They were no match for the Aryans, armed with bows and arrows and axes. Especially terrifying were their war chariots drawn by charging horses. Gradually, the Aryans conquered the people of the Indus River Valley. Many became slaves to the invaders. Aryans occupy northern India. After they conquered the Indus River Valley people, the Aryans gradually moved into the Ganges River Valley, a rainforest region to the east of the Indus River. By about 800 BCE, they'd learned to make tools and weapons out of iron. With iron axes, the Aryans cleared areas of the thick rainforest of the northeast. Here they built farms, villages, and even cities. Aryan life. Most of what we know of early Aryan life comes from religious books called the Vedas, which means knowledge. At first, the Vedas were handed down from memory by Aryan priests. They were not written down for hundreds of years. But the Vedas tell us that the earliest Aryans were herders and warriors who lived in villages and tended flocks of cattle and sheep. Always on the move, these people did not build cities or spacious homes at first. For a long time, they had no written language. Priests called Brahmins performed religious services and composed hymns and prayers. The Aryans organized their city around three major classes. Priests were at the top. They guarded religious traditions. Warriors fought and governed, and ordinary people worked. Gradually, the Aryans drew the conquered people into their class system and made a fourth class. This included farm workers, laborers, and servants. By 500 BCE, there was a strict division of classes. Europeans called it the caste system. Each caste, or class, had special work and duties to perform. Under the caste system, people always had to stay in the caste of their parents. Over time, the caste system became more complicated. The main castes divided into hundreds of different groups, in which each person had the same occupation or type of work. Shopkeepers, farmers, traders, barbers, weavers all belonged to their own group. Since people couldn't leave their group, they did the exact same work as their parents and other members of their group did. A weaver's son became a weaver. A barber's daughter had to marry a barber.